So the message today from the Bureau of Meteorology is that parts of the south and southeastern Queensland can expect rainfall to continue into the weekend, and with heavier falls within this rainfall to potentially produce flooding. So for parts of the southern and southeastern interior, widespread showers and thunderstorms will continue today and into tomorrow. Locally, heavy falls are possible with thunderstorms on both of these days, but the particular area of focus where we're more likely to see these heavier falls are for parts of the Darling Downs and eastern Maranoa and Warrego. So the focus of the activity will then contract to southeastern Queensland over the weekend. So for southeastern Queensland, the risk of moderate falls may increase from today, but certainly we will see that risk increase as we move into the weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. Localised heavy falls could occur at times over the weekend, and the area where we're likely to see the most risk is the areas south of Brisbane, so that includes Logan, Gold Coast and the Scenic Rim areas as well. This could, on Sunday, we could see that risk broaden a little bit as well. So there are quite a few areas of focus for this rainfall. So of particular interest is that with these storms and rainfall, we could see these storms producing heavier amounts of rainfall. So really what that means is seeing quite a large amount of rainfall fall in shorter periods of time. So that's when we do see that risk of flash flooding really increase. So that's why we want people to be aware of the situation today, because the storms that are happening and that will happen over the weekend can cause flooding. So we could see up to 50 to 100 millimetres, as I said, in a short duration, so a short period of time, possible within these storms. And we could see isolated totals higher than that if we are seeing the severity of storms increase. So it's very important to note that some parts in the south and southeast, we're seeing moisture of the soil and of the catchments quite high. So that means that catchments, rivers, creeks can respond quite rapidly, and we don't necessarily need to see really heavy rainfall to see responses. We could see responses from moderate rainfall this weekend. So in terms of the flooding situation at the moment, so major flooding is we've got that on the Warrego River, so at Charleville. So from this evening, we are expecting to see river levels rising above that moderate level. And that's due to multiple days of, we've seen heavy rain falling in that area from thunderstorms. And as we see that sort of water move downstream, we can also expect to see moderate flooding downstream from Charleville, and that's more likely tomorrow. We also have a flood watch out for the rain that is coming over the weekend, so that covers quite a large area of southern inland rivers. So that includes the McIntyre, Weir, Moonee, Balonne, Warrego and the Paru River as well. So quite a large area where we are asking people to stay up to date as they are at risk of flooding, and that's why we have issued that flood watch. So at this stage, rainfall is likely to slowly ease later in the weekend and earlier into next week as this system that's causing all of this rainfall moves offshore. So we really are asking all residents in those areas to stay up to date with the Bureau's forecasts and warnings as the situation progresses over this weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Good afternoon. As we've heard from the Bureau today, we are expecting to see continued showers and periods of heavy rainfall in southeast Queensland for today, tonight and into the weekend. What we are seeing is the catchments in this area are very wet and saturated, and when we do see periods of heavy rainfall, we're seeing flash flooding occurring right across SEQ. Could I please urge people who are out driving? We have seen some significant traffic accidents on our roads today in the wet weather. So if you are out and about, if you don't need to be on the roadways during this period, please reconsider your travel. And that's not just in the southeast. We've seen heavy rainfalls and we're seeing flooded catchments right through from Toowoomba to Roma to Charleville, and I'll speak a little bit more about Charleville shortly. Again, we saw tragic incident earlier in the week at Greenbank when we saw flooded catchments there. So again, please don't take the risk. If it's flooded, forget it. What we are seeing are people are still wanting to take the risk into creeks and catchments that they think they know. But what you don't know is what's under the water, so, or the flow of the water. So please, if it's flooded, don't drive in it. We're also monitoring the situation around Charleville, and we're working closely with our disaster management agencies there. We are expecting a peak this evening of around about 6.7 metres at Charleville. I've been informed that the local disaster management group will be putting the levee gates in place this afternoon at approximately 3 p.m. The levee has a capacity of approximately 7.9 metres, which will protect the town, and we're not expecting the flood waters to exceed that. But like I said, the disaster management groups are very active in that area and are putting the appropriate preparations in place. The flooding at Charleville will see significant road access to Charleville itself and surrounding towns restricted or cut off. Can I ask anyone who is travelling in that western area to please go on to the TMR website, the transport website, or the local council disaster management dashboards, and have a look at road closures in those areas, as the potential is there for you to become cut off and isolated in the west. We've also engaged with our other government agencies and emergency services in the Charleville area. Our Department of Health have taken the appropriate precautions for our vulnerable people in that area. And I know that the police have appropriate traffic management plans in place there. It is critically important that you monitor your travel in this area. When we see the floodwaters hit the peak this evening, expected to be 6.7 metres, we could expect these floodwaters to stay up over the next 2 to 3 days before we'll see those levees gates removed or the roadways open. So please, if you're travelling in that area, again, please go onto the Department of Transport website or the local council disaster management dashboard regarding access. Thank you. I'll hand over to Brian Cox from the State Emergency Service.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The SES have received already 59 requests for assistance since Wednesday. A lot of these are to do with water inundation into homes. We have deployed additional Queensland Fire and Emergency Services swiftwater crews, in particular in the area of Charleville. We have activated and are ready, have SES volunteers in various units and groups on standby to support people in need. What we're asking people to do is to remain vigilant. With the current weather conditions, flash flooding can occur in minutes, not hours or days. We're asking people to be careful. I'll reiterate what the Deputy Commissioner has said. If you must travel, check your website, local government or the TMR website before you go, and consider safety to yourself, your family, as well as those responders that may need to rescue you should you get into trouble. If you do get into trouble, call 000 for emergency assistance or 132 500 for SES assistance. Also, for those in those affected areas, as outlined by the Deputy Commissioner, please consider, if you have to travel in those areas, to at least warn people and friends and family about your travel arrangements so they are well aware if you do get into trouble. I'll reiterate once again, the next 24, 48 hours is going to be important. The roads conditions, the weather conditions are going to be ad hoc. There will be short bursts of water in already water affected areas that can impact you, your family and your friends. Thank you.
Happy to take questions.
Just a question for the following. The situation that happened in Greenbank yesterday, that was very quick, and a lot of residents say that they didn't get much warning. Is there concern that we could see that happen over the weekend, given the forecast again in some of those areas?
Yeah, so the nature of flash flooding and the rainfall that can fall in a very short amount of time, so seeing a lot of rainfall falling in short amounts of time, that's when we do see flash flooding. So the nature of that is that it can occur very quickly. So we were issuing the storm warnings indicating that these storms were producing really large amounts of rainfall falling in short amounts of time on Wednesday evening, for those residents in that Greenbank and Logan area. So really the message going forward for this weekend is for residents in southern and southeastern Queensland to really be across our website and our app as well, so they can get the warnings as they're happening and have as much notice as possible, especially with the nature of flash flooding being quite rapid.
Could you please explain as well just how the system is moving? Is it just the one singular system that's going to be impacting the southeast corner eventually?
So this system is what we call a trough, so a trough affecting both Queensland and New South Wales, so quite a large weather system affecting two states, and at the moment that is what is causing so much rainfall. There is a slight risk over the weekend that we could see a second trough, so what we would call a coastal trough forming along the coast and producing a bit more rainfall for that southeastern area, but that's still a little bit uncertain as we head into the weekend in terms of whether that will form or not. But the main feature really is that trough combined with quite a large amount of moisture in the air. So the atmosphere has a lot of moisture in it at the moment, and the result of that is we're seeing these storms producing quite a lot of rainfall.
Is it getting sort of harder to predict what this weather is doing? It's been so wild over the summer period as well, and even now it's getting harder. Is it sort of due to that air moisture? What's the Bureau sort of think about that?
Sorry.
Is it getting harder to predict what this wild weather is sort of doing from the Bureau's perspective?
Yeah, so I can't fully comment on, that model output and what that is producing on sort of longer term trends. But in terms of our forecasting for these events, the process of, getting the best science and getting that modelling and really delivering to the community what is the most likely scenario, given that there's always a level of uncertainty with forecasting. So I can't really, comment on the trends over a longer period of time.
Can I ask a question of the Deputy Commissioner, please? See this school holiday period, the time when people are travelling, visiting relatives and families and going on holidays, would you tell people to reconsider some of those holiday plans given this weather forecast?
Well, what we've seen is, we've seen intense rainfall now right across parts of the state. We've spoken today about southeast Queensland, Toowoomba, right out to Roma, to Charleville. So I suppose it depends on where you're travelling for your school holidays. Even if you're travelling locally, you should be considering the weather conditions, going onto the BOM website, having a look at the radar, even in southeast Queensland, because it is hard to predict, because the rain periods can be quite isolated in a small area, which will see creeks rapidly rise and fall. I suppose the key message, but, is if you are travelling and you do see a flooded creek, no matter how low that might look, is don't drive in it. That's when you should really back it up. If you're travelling more longer distances out west, the other side of the range, Toowoomba, out towards Roma, Charleville, you really do need to reconsider your travel. You need to be looking at the Department of Transport website, you need to be looking at the local disaster management dashboards, because there are roads out there that will be cut off with these floodwaters. And potentially you could end up between two flooded river systems, which will see you trapped for multiple days. So please, if you are travelling out there, make sure you check those conditions before you go. And it might be the time where, if you do have to travel, if you live locally and you have to travel, that you might take some extra precautions, put a bit of extra food and water in your vehicle, just in case you do get trapped.
Have you heard reports of people being stuck? There's obviously multiple highways closed.
No, we haven't at the moment, but can I say, we see this on a regular occurrence. We have a lot of people tourists in Queensland who don't know the local conditions, who travel right through the western parts of Queensland, and in these events we regularly see tourists or other people stuck between catchments that have risen. As I've indicated, we will see catchments closed and roads closed out around that Charleville area.
In terms of Charleville and the levy that we put in, what's the risk window for that? Is what would happen per se if there was, intense flash flooding that rose beyond that level?
Yeah, look, 6.7 metres is what we're expecting it to peak, and that's based on the modelling we're seeing, and we're getting updates on that all the time. The levy has that capacity to 7.9 metres, and I'm briefed by the local disaster management group that evacuations wouldn't be necessary until we get to about 8.1 metres, which is not what we're expected to see here. But can I say, should that occur, we would be in a little bit of uncharted territory because since we have put the levy in place, we have not seen the levy breached. So there's obviously been a lot of modelling gone into place for the levy. The local disaster management group and the district disaster management group are very confident that the levy will provide protection to the community.
Would you be able to advise on the Augathella levy as well? So apparently local community groups say that might be pulled.
No, that's not the brief I have. I've been told that the Augathella levy does provide adequate support to approximately 6.2 metres, and again, we're not expecting it to exceed that period.
Just a little bit more on the SES.
Thank you.
If that's possible. So I know they're probably focused more on the southern interior, but are you planning your workforce around just spread it, I suppose? Is there reserves, I guess, that are getting ready and geared up in case they're called upon? Because it seems it's going to be quite widespread potentially impacts.
No, good question. So we have 298 SES groups across Queensland that work within 75 units, and we all support each other. If one region is impacted, sometimes those SES volunteers are also impacted in that area. So we are ready to support our neighbouring regions, units and groups. So we have a process in place that we work together, and should we exhaust that, we've also got interstate, arrangements as well. So we're well resourced with over 5,200 active volunteers at the moment who are trained in a variety of roles to support their local communities.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you.